How do you advise someone on whether to form an LLC or C Corp? What factors come into play there?
I look at the nature of the investment, how many investors there are, what the proportion of the investment is for each investor, because with respect to the visa rules, you have proportionality rules. So I always look at the nationality of each person, whether or not we have a tax treaty with that country, how many people are going to be, how many investors do we have in the LLC, what are their percentage interests, and then we start getting into like what rights and obligations each of the partners have. Is one a passive investor? Is one an active investor? And that's where you really get into, you need an effective operating agreement with good corporate counsel. Sorry, but not LegalZoom. I don't think that. No, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that or not, but it just makes no sense to me to start a legitimate investment in the United States that's between, I don't know, 25,000 and 5 billion, and then, go to LegalZoom and ask them to do the operating agreement. I think that makes no sense. And really, the operating agreement of an LLC is the guts of your agreement with your partners.
Yeah.
In a C Corp, it would be your shareholders agreement. In an LLC, it's your operating agreement. It's really important that it be done properly and well. And I think, in as much as I drafted a bazillion shareholders agreements in my life, the LLC operating agreements are tough because they're riddled with all that partnership tax law.
I don't know if you would agree with this, but the way we try to really simply explain whether you should form an LLC or a C Corp is if you're looking to raise US venture capital from a US investor, they will require a Delaware C Corp.
They will not require that in the beginning. They will want that eventually, but it is not a requirement in the beginning. And I would never have people go to the expense of forming a C Corp. So generally what we do, and this really depends on the investment, right? So if you're a restaurant and there's underlying real estate in the restaurant, you want the underlying real estate to be held in an LLC.
Okay.
For tax purposes and for foreign investors, generally what I've seen is the corporate guys forming a C Corp on top of the LLC. Then the investment from overseas, and we always need to be mindful of the source of funds. I think the most important thing to educate people about when it comes to investing in the United States as a foreign national is that source of funds is crucial. And that if you can't prove where the money came from, and I mean whether you've accumulated the wealth over your lifetime, which is acceptable in like an EB-5 visa, or whether your father lent you $200,000 for the E-2 visa. So you can have loans for the E-2 visa, but you must always be able to document your source of funds from the money coming out of the father's account into the kid's account, the promissory note attendant to the loan documentation to prove that it's true, which is part of my submission with the E-2.
Clearly, it's way more complex than just decision tree, LLC versus C Corp. However, there are some cases we've seen where, let's say you're applying to join an accelerator like Y Combinator or Techstars. They will actually require to make their funding or make that investment that you have a C Corp, an EIN, which is required, an employer identification number to open your US business bank account.
But you have that all with LLCs.
You have it with LLCs, but these accelerators will require the Delaware C Corp.
That is precipitous, as far as I'm concerned, too expensive, and isn't rendering the appropriate tax advice at the outset.
If the company needs to give stock, administer equity...
That's different. So in an LLC, you're going to give membership interests in lieu of stock.
Yep.
I don't know who's involved in the accelerators or the incubators, but I can tell you, and I've seen many an LLC be taken public. I've watched businesses grow from nothing to 1,500 employees and become worldwide. They've all started as LLCs. No one has started as a C Corp.